Good evening, everyone. Mark Krawczyk here, the producer of the Spoiler Room podcast, as well as the host. Tonight's episode is about The Tingler. Yes, a classic film starring Mr. Vincent Price. Now, this film is known to be very scary, and during the discussion of The Tingler, you may start to feel a sensation crawling up your spine. It may grow as the discussion continues, and fear may overcome you. You may feel a tightness in your chest, and something squeezing your spine, almost crushing it. Fear not, my friends. The cure for this condition is simple. Just scream. Scream as loud as you can while listening to this podcast, and that sensation will go away, and you can continue to hear our crew talk about this film. We appreciate you listening to our podcast, and also like to remind you that the Spoiler Room podcast is not responsible for those who may die of fear while listening to this show. We thank you for your support and hope you enjoy the listen.
The 1950s, America and Korea were at war. The space race took off with the launch of Sputnik. The Cold War was heating up, and comic books came under fire. With the threat of nuclear attack came the concern of radiation and its effect on life. Fears of a communist invasion, technological advances, and creatures from beyond our moon spread across the country. But worry not, my friends, for you are safe in the spoiler room with the crew, so grab your favorite drink and pull up a chair as they discuss monster films from this decade in It Came From the 50s.
Yes, welcome, my friends, to another special It Came From the 50s here in the Spoiler Room. Thank you for coming down the stairs and pulling up a chair to hear us talk about the classic 1959 Vincent Price film, The Tingler. Now, with me tonight is a great crew that is assembled to talk about this classic film. First off, he's back in the Spoiler Room, our BFD himself, Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad you could be in.
I don't care.
I love you, Glenn. No.
I love you too, man.
All right. And next to Glenn is the lovely Mr. Andrew Shearer. Hello, Andrew. You're starting to become a regular here in the Spoiler Room.
That's because I eat Raisin Bran, homie.
Okay, Raisin Bran. There you go.
That makes me all type of regular.
Raisin Bran makes you regular.
It really cancels itself out with the raisin. Don't shit happen.
It's kind of a circular thing where you put the peanut butter, strap it to the back of a cat, and when you drop it, it always lands on his feet, but it always lands on peanut butter side down, so it just kind of spins in the air. No?
Damn, man.
That
would be my number two choice for an anecdote.
That was such a dad joke. I'm old. And next to the lovely Andrew Shearer is Scotty D. He's in his house. Hello, Scotty D.
I'm not lovely.
You are always lovely, but you're Scotty D.
Okay, but I just
want
to make
sure.
Scotty D. I just want to make it just wanting to clarify, just for the record and everything. You know, I came
always
here. I took my anti-anxiety pill so I wouldn't get too scared about the movie. I took my LSD because I understand that that's an important part of this film experience. So
it's a way to communicate with hot dogs.
I'm ready. It's a way to communicate with hot dogs, absolutely, and I'm ready to commit to the show.
Well, I admire your commitment, and you will always be our baby Spice, Scott. So.
Yeah, I love being baby Spice.
And next to him, she has returned to the Spoiler Room after a long hiatus. She has been quite busy, namely working on a film recently. She is back with us. Filmmaker Tanya Atomic is here with us tonight in the Spoiler Room. Welcome back, Tanya. You have been missed.
Hello, I'm back.
Glad
I'm tingled.
You're tingled. Is it a French tingler, though? That's what it is, But anyway, so The Tingler, 1959, Vincent Price. And let's see. Hey, Scott, you want to give the summary for The Tingler?
I just did the Phantom, goddamn.
Oh, you did? That's true, you did do the Phantom. Okay,
I can do the Tingler, it's okay.
I'm sure you can.
I can do, I can tingle all over you people.
Yeah, okay.
So
you do it so well, Scott.
I do send the tingles. Anyway, but, okay, so the film opens up and we discover that Vincent Price, who also handles apparently all the autopsies for the entire tri-state area, is also heavily involved in research theorizing that when people die of extreme fright, there is a creature that may manifest itself that is killed by that. It manifests itself at the moment of fear and is destroyed at the moment when people scream. He then meets somebody who has, I'm sure we'll get to the plot and everything about it, but basically he finds that that this person is married to a woman who cannot hear or speak. Since she cannot verbalize her scream, he is able through her to discover that, yes, there is such a creature, but the creature is only part of the evil goings-on in this movie, in which seemingly everybody wants to kill everybody else.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, this film, I remember first watching it, and watching it now again years later, I'm like, holy crap, this is a dark film. I'm like, I don't remember this. I remember the creature, and William Castle coming out, but actually now paying a little bit more attention now that I'm older and, well, not wiser, but older. I'm like, wow, okay, this Vincent, man, a little bit of different role for him, not quite. Tanya, we'll start with you, though. You remember when you watched The Tingler?
Well, when I very first saw it, it was a few years ago. I actually found out about the movie because I'm a fan of John Waters, and he did an art show in Seattle where it was so cute. I mean, he's so funny and he's so clever. He had one of his, he had made these dioramas and had these photos that he'd done. And one of his dioramas was called Ben's Drive-In.
Okay.
And it was like a diorama of a drive-in screen playing the movie Ben, about the rats, the sequel to Willard. And in the slots, where the little cars would drive in were rat traps. But they're like the metal kind, and then like rubber rats butts were hanging out. It was so funny. So funny. But anyway, he had a panel of photos that I guess he used to take pictures of movie screens or of the TV screens or something like that. And he had one of the Tingler, and it was like a series of photos of, like the Tingler coming out or coming toward someone or something. And I was like, what is that? I've never heard of that movie. I have to see this. It looks crazy. And, so I saw it the same thing. I felt the same way. I remembered the creature, and I remembered like some of the gimmicky stuff and William Castle talking and stuff like that. But I didn't remember, like how dark it was. Like one of the things that impressed me when I watched it again was I love the dialogue between Vincent Price and his wife, and they obviously hate each other and have this long-standing animosity. And like the dialogue was so biting and so dark. It was like an unfunny Lockhorns or something. But it was it was so good. And it was a different I don't know why I kind of forgot about that or whatever. But yeah, it was like a little bit different than what I was expecting and what I had seen from Vincent Price before. I liked it.
Yeah, that's what caught me was the role, the way he was playing this. He actually plays it a little straighter than some of the roles we recognize him in as being a little bit more macabre or a little bit over, but this one, he's playing a little bit different. At least it felt like it. Andrew, how about you with The Tingler when you saw it?
Man, y'all, this is the first horror movie I ever watched all the way through.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's why I wanted to do this, man. There's a lot of family connections with The Tingler. We'll talk about it a little bit later and when we get to the gimmick part of it. Got a little special story to tell.
Ooh.
But yeah, man, my pops was had seen it originally when he was a kid, and he was a fan of like the 13 Ghosts and the House on Hunt. He just had like really good memories of going to see him and shit. So I was scared of everything when I was a kid. I did not want to watch any horror movie at all. And he was like the biggest horror fan ever. So he was like, look, this one, it's funny. It's so dumb. It's not scary at all. You'll just laugh the whole time. Wait till you see the monsters. Shit looks like some barbecue ribs with legs. And so I'm like, all right, we got to watch it. in the middle of the day with the lights on and everything, and I just try to be brave. And yeah, I ended up like really liking it. So this was my first experience with a horror movie like ever.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
cool, man.
And then he went and told me the story about going to see it and the shit they would do, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was, he got me like hyped to do it. So yeah, ended up being like my first horror I ever saw.
That is so cool, and not exactly a bad one to have as your first horror film, in all honesty.
No. Then I experimented later, and I was like, I can watch black and white horror movies. So while they were gone, I put on Night of the Living Dead.
Oh,
That was a bit of a
They're
joke.
coming to get you, Andrew.
Dude, they got me. That was a mistake from like a motherfucker.
And Glenn, how about you with the Tingler?
The first time I actually saw it was in the theater. It was which theater? It was the Times.
The Times, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of fun. They even had the little thing rigged up with the seats and stuff like that.
Aw.
So yeah, it was really cool. And that was only a few years ago. So I mean, I'd always heard about it. I just never seen it. And then I rewatched it probably about a year or so ago, and then last week. So it's Vincent Price. I love Vincent Price, which is surprising that I hadn't seen this earlier. But it's a nifty little movie.
Yeah, it is a nice. It's not a huge scope of a movie by any means, but it is a nifty little movie, and that part of the appeal, I think, is of course William Castle's doing. This was his return to was it Columbia Pictures is where he came back, and I think he made this was the first one he made with his own production company too. So William Castle. If you're not familiar with him, folks, you're missing out, really, with some of the stuff he has done. Scotty D, what about you?
Well, the thing about William Castle movies with me was probably that I was more peripherally, if that's the right word, aware of them than actually seeing them for the longest time. 13 Ghosts. I heard about on an Entertainment Tonight's story, and then didn't see the movie for like 10, 15 years. The House on Haunted Hill, they used to air ads for it on Cinemax during the day, and I didn't see it for like 20 years because I was scared of horror films. The Tingler was something where there was a book of movie monster stuff. I don't think it was the Donald Glut book. But I think it's actually a book that I also got from a school book club because it reminded me of the Don Glut book, and it would basically list all these monsters. And even though I was too much of a chicken to see any of the movies yet, I knew about the monsters. Oh, there's Frankenstein, King Kong, the Wolfman. Yep. Oh, they're trying to be newer, so yep. There's the Terminator. Okay, and then like the Tingler. What the hell is the Tingler? And I was like reading this, and I was like, really? They actually wired the seats? And I was really amazed by it, and I promptly was really interested in this movie and promptly didn't see it for another 2 decades. Just like the others. I don't know why. It wasn't that I didn't want to see them, it's just that I didn't get to them. And then probably like within a 5-year period, I just started seeing as many William Castle things as I could. And very impressed because yes, there's the gimmick, but in this one more than any of the other movies that I had seen of William Castle, and there's still a few I haven't, it really seemed like the gimmick was secondary to what was going on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So it really felt like, okay, we're throwing the gimmick in here, but honestly we already have enough of a movie going on. So, it really feels like, oh yeah, and here's the scene. But then the rest of it is already going on. And as I mentioned in the synopsis, there's the Tingler, and then there's all the other horrible people in the movie. And the thing about this film that was really interesting, and I think William Castle loved his gimmicks, but he also loved being the showman. And he loved being the person who gets on the screen. I think part of that, I think his two loves that come from that are evident in this film. One, his love of showmanship. He loved being the showman. And 2, his love of Hitchcock.
Oh, yeah.
His love of Hitchcock it would be further explored in films like Homicidal, Straitjacket, but this one, you really got to see, oh, yeah, his love of Hitchcock is on full here.
It did. I'm glad you mentioned that because it was kind of bugging me. I'm like, God, this feels like another director's movie. The style, what is it? Now that you mentioned Hitchcock, it just clicks.
There's a few that he did like that were similar to that. I think Macabre was like that too. But honestly, I don't think I've seen Macabre yet, so I can't really say for sure.
But yeah, the gimmick Spectral, where they wired up the seats and they would vibrate them randomly when the Tingler showed up. Which is a great gimmick because you never knew which seat you were going to sit in at first, and apparently he came up with a few different ideas for it. But you get that warning in the beginning. I just love how he comes on the screen and he starts talking, warning people and saying it's okay to scream during a horror film. Is basically what he's saying,
right?
And then you see too, if you look online, you find out they had like a death certificate that you could sign or you could get. It was a replica of the one that you see in the movie at one point when the mute woman is kind of going through her thing. But yeah, this film, I was impressed. It opens with a guy on death row, and that's how after he's killed, we get to see Vincent Price, and I just get this kick out of, he's a mortician. He's sitting there with this guy's brother-in-law, is it, I think? And he just starts carving on the guy while this family is sitting there. In true Vincent style, too. He's just like, it's like, what the hell? The way this film opens, man, Glenn, what'd you think about this first intro with our Dr. Chapin?
I thought it was perfectly normal. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the conversation they have, though, I mean, he's carving up his relative, and he's just like, oh, yeah, oh, well, hey, you want to go for a beer?
Dude, it was the 50s.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just normal. People didn't have emotions until 1977.
Oh.
And then Annie Hall and the Millennium Falcon both got together and opened people's hearts up to joy.
Exactly.
People learned how to love. So true emotion. But watching this whole film, he's playing a little bit more of the straight man, isn't he, Andrew, in this Vincent Price's than maybe what we kind of used to see, a little more macabre him?
No, I don't think so, man. No, I mean, if anything, he was probably worried about playing another mad scientist type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as being kind of a dark, semi-sinister married guy who batters around with his wife, that they both want each other. They just did that in House on Haunted Hill,
Yeah,
so
that's
I think
true.
there's probably more similarity. I don't think there's a whole lot unusual like that about this movie necessarily.
I guess I'm used to him being more. Most of the films that I've seen, of his or whatnot, he's a little more in costume or just a little bit more theatrical. This one, at least when we first see him, he seems to play it a little bit like just average everyday guy who likes to carve up dead people.
No, you're right. I mean, he was just one step away from breaking out some chips and salsa on top of somebody's rib cage and shit. I get you. I see what you're saying.
Go ahead.
Oh, I did get the feeling watching it, like, is he supposed to be the good guy? Are we supposed to root for him? Or is he supposed to be the bad guy? There was a sort of ambiguity about him. Like, he never really did anything that bad, but there were moments that were really questionable. So I thought that was interesting about his character and how he played that. He kind of played, it was normal to him, but some of the things that were going on were kind of, outlandish or dark.
He did have that dark side. He made you wonder his motivation, which leads you to later on when you get to the deaf mute lady and what's happening to her. There is that kind of enigma for a while of who's actually doing that scary stuff to her to try to frighten her. So I think it's a good setup with the way his character is. That I think William wanted you to have that enigma. because of that, it sets it up for later on. Because and then it being Vincent Price, he plays it with just enough darkness so you could go, yeah, I could see maybe it was him. Mm-hmm. Scott, do you think they set that enigma up well with Vincent's character, so you're not quite sure about him?
They wanted to make you guess the whole time, because your expectation for his character, particularly with the other films he's done, especially the one he had just done with William Castle, House on Haunted Hill, your expectation is he's going to be sinister and he's going to be the instrument of evil and diabolical stuff. And so when you see that the film keeps you guessing up to the end, and there's even a point where he turns and says, no, we're not going to use... Well, I'm not going to write a single essay about this creature. I'm not going to do anything because, yes, it would be a huge win for me, but it would be a horrible, horrible development if this were discovered. I think it was casting against type. The funny thing about Vincent Price is, and I love Vincent Price, keep in mind, I love him because it didn't matter if he was approaching Shakespeare or if he was approaching something like Dr. Phibes. He brought the same level of class to it, whether it was serious or whether it was camp. And he was always aware of what the level was. Mm-hmm. And I was really appreciate that about him. But the thing about Vincent Price is that, and you can actually hear this, you can actually hear him, there are audio recordings where he gives cooking instructions. And when he gives cooking instructions, he sounds like he's about to kill you. Because he's Vincent Price. So he just had this thing. It's great because he's actually played very ineffectual people. Just watch excellent classic movie, and I'm sure some people here have seen it, Laura. Mm-hmm. Early role for him, very different type of role, and completely different type of character. So I think that anybody who saw Laura would, and then saw him 10 years later, would have been like, oh, well, that's a big difference. Anybody who saw his other stuff first and then watched Laura would say, like, he's still a bit creepy, ain't he? He just can't help it. It's like this, he had this sense of elegance, but it was like very sinister elegance. So I think this was a different type of part for him, and rather than make him a total good guy or a total bad guy, the film really kept you guessing until the end. Mm-hmm. And you can even make the argument that the film doesn't actually let you know for sure if he's a good guy or a bad guy till the end. But but I think it was a stretch. I think it was meant to keep people guessing, because as much as William Castle was about the gimmicks, he was about the whole con about filmmaking. And filmmaking is a con. It's totally manipulative. Hosting the thing. It is.
You got three filmmakers in this room,
and they all are probably aware. Like, yes, I'm manipulating. I am hoping that you feel this way, and so they're always twisting and turning. And he kept these movies moving like a maze, where you didn't know what was going on. In House on Haunted Hill, you didn't know what was real and what wasn't. In The Tingler, you don't know who's going to turn and who's not. It keeps going like that. So, and I think he delighted in that, and he knew that's what made an effective horror film.
Yeah, it is evident in here. He's keeping you guessing, and you're right. It actually is effective in this film. I find it hard to believe after watching it again. Pardon me for bringing this into it, but I saw a quote or something on IMDb that says this film made it into the Razzies creators 50 best worst films.
Well,
ever.
Fuck them.
I'm like sitting there going, the effects are a bit cheesy because they're on low budget, but those scenes with Vincent and his wife, Isabel, played by Patricia Cutts, man, those scenes are some hardcore scenes.
Right.
The Razzies have always been just tabloid, very sanctimonious, pompous, sniveling things masquerading as satire. Their first award ceremony, they nominated Stanley Kubrick as worst director. Ever since then, they've just gotten more and more tabloid. They have no credibility whatsoever in my book.
But Patricia Cutts and Vincent gets some fun scenes. But there are three female characters in here. Isabel Stevens Chapman, played by Patricia Cutts, as we mentioned, who plays the wife who has as many barbs out for her husband as her husband does for her. Then you have her sister, played by Pamela Lincoln, who is kind of the exact opposite. She's the good girl. And then we have Judith Evelyn playing the, I believe she plays the mute and deaf woman. And Andrew, it's the 50s. Now we're talking late 50s. But what did you think of the three female characters written in this?
Well, they're all white ladies, so it's definitely the 50s.
Well, it is the 50s.
The entire cast is.
I was going to say the whole cast.
And while we're saying fuck stuff, I do have to say fuck the 50s. I'm just not one of these white people that thinks the 50s were great. You know, I know a lot of people that do. You know,
sure.
Like, hey, let's listen to this, to Brian Setzer, and you know they'll be racist. I'm like, well, a hot rod and whites only.
There is an argument to be made that maybe like Brian Setzer was hoping, okay, let's bring this element back, but not this other element, just to give Brian the benefit of the doubt.
I'm just being, about the 50s enthusiast, but I like. I remember being very struck by Ollie's wife there. Judith Evelyn, I think she might have done a play with Vincent Price, and that's where they found her. She just doesn't seem like a regular movie actor. William Castle always had a knack for finding some very, very interesting faces, to put in front of the camera, along with the ones that would bring in, obviously, the younger ones to get the younger audiences in and shit. So I thought they were all very different. You don't want them to all being that they are all white people. You want them to stand out as different from each other. So I felt like they did.
Yeah, Judith, especially because she doesn't have any dialogue, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, she does sign language, but
she's like a silent movie, basically, like watching a silent. I thought it was cool that they made them have a silent movie theater, because her performance looks like right out of a silent movie.
Yeah, I noticed too. Her performance was a little bit more stylized, which I actually thought that worked. I mean, it could pull someone out of the film, but for me, it worked. It brought this kind of, I don't know, almost dance-like quality, like an artistic quality to some of her when she was going through some of her horror moments, which actually I found more eerie because of that.
Yeah, it is creepy when she gets her scare on and she can't scream, and there's the thing in the mask and the window opening and all that. Yeah, the expressions she has on her face didn't pull me out. It was more creepy because she couldn't scream. You're feeling for her because she can't scream. She can't say, "Hey, what's this weird shit happening in my apartment?"
Hey, you know how they did that black and white with the color? Listen to this. Y'all know how they did it?
Yep. Go ahead. You can tell our folks, but yeah.
Well, if you already know, fuck it. I'm gonna say.
No, I can tell people out there don't know. Come on, drop some knowledge, Andrew.
They painted the room and painted her black and white and shot it on color film.
It's one of my favorite parts of this movie. No,
I actually didn't know that.
Oh, really? I'm glad you brought it up, Andrew, because I knew that a while ago. The scene where they have the red color, they actually painted that black and white and
painted her black and white too. They scared her so much she lost all her color.
That's interesting, because I thought there was a little bit of rear projection going on because it looked grainier.
It looked shitty.
It looked very grainy, yeah.
Yeah, because it was different stock, and then they, I guess, had trouble inserting it.
That makes sense. It's different stock.
Yeah, they had to insert it into the footage, and so it.
William Castle's cheap ass probably just got some short ends out of the garbage.
Yeah. All those parts are.
Poor guy kept having to load the film every 2 minutes. Yeah, damn it. Damn it.
And why can't y'all use a crayon? What, for the scene? No, the whole movie. Right?
It's the whole movie. Glenn, how'd you feel about the female characters in this? I know the guy, Vincent Price and his assistant and all that, but how'd you feel about the three principal female characters in here? The only
meh. I mean, nothing special about them, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe they fit a little more of the stereotype of the 50s characters? Because you've watched some of the other 50s movies with us now, and we've seen kind of an array of different female characters in these sci-fi films.
Yeah, I did like a bit of the, I don't know if you'd call it chemistry between Vincent Price and his wife. So I did like that, the barbs back and forth. Mm-hmm. But none of them really stand out, I don't think.
Sure. Yeah, they seemed a little bit standard for the day. I mean, the performances by the ladies were good, but the way they were written, you got the good sister and the bad sister. And then, there's always that dichotomy. Well, usually there's that dichotomy. Good sister and bad sister, except for the one that we watched, was it The Crawling Eye? I think it was. Both sisters weren't horrible people, so that was good. But
yeah. I know that both of these movies were 1959. I think House on Haunted Hill came first.
Mm-hmm.
And if it did, then The Tingler is just repeating a theme that really worked well in House on Haunted Hill. On that movie, also, Vincent Price was... because House on Haunted Hill... I'm checking the IMDb to make sure I'm not totally bluffing this, but yeah, House on Haunted Hill came first, and in that movie also, Vincent Price was at odds with his wife. It was worse at that point, even than The Tingler, in that they were openly trying to murder one another in the movie, and there was like thoughts that there might be a killing and stuff like that, and I think it was in continuing that. I think The Tingler, whereas the House on Haunted Hill is just a fun old spook show, The Tingler, as we've said, has some of that, but also there's this other like Hitchcockian thing going on in the background. So I think there's a little bit more psychology going on in this movie. So it's continuing that theme where he's got this wife that is just really awful, and you have to wonder, like, and right at the beginning, you're like, okay, is she awful because she's awful, or is she awful because she's married to Vincent Price? And we do expect that he could take out an axe and murder everybody. And like I said, that keeps you guessing on that as well. So you are left following her and wondering what's her deal. And then you realize, no, she's just a really bitter, cruel person who's very selfish. And then you get the good girl, so you get the good girl model and the awful person, also like in House on Haunted Hill. And then you get the victim. It's not a very sophisticated model, so I'm not going to really praise it for being forward-thinking at all. I will say that it continues themes that William Castle had already capitalized on, and that it does it with a little bit more sophistication and a little bit more adult flair than previously. I will also note that let's keep in mind that virtually all of these characters we're talking about are really matter-of-factly written out of the story, and we never hear from them in the most important parts of the movie.
They just kind of disappear.
The wife, who seems to be a real threat, eventually just leaves off camera, almost like she quit at lunch one day or something, and they said, "Oh shit," And as far as the good girl and even his protege that he's working with, we kind of lose them for the entire third act, and. They're just not needed. So they're kind of it's one of the only weaknesses of the film, really, is that we just kind of get rid of these, I wonder how these people are going to figure into the story. Okay, I guess not at all. Never mind.
Well, I guess, what rumor has it that the Tingler creature was, he was Union, and he had specific clauses that he could only be in a scene with only a couple other people so they wouldn't overshadow him. He's not very tall, so he wanted to, hog the camera. And supposedly the Tingler monster was just a pain to work with. So that could be why they disappeared. No, I don't know. I'm talking on my ass. We've had a bunch of sausage talk. Let's have another perspective here from Tanya, how'd you
Oh,
feel
me. Oh.
with the female characters written in here, considering this is 1959?
Well, they do seem like stock characters, especially, the sister. She definitely seems like she's in there on purpose as a foil for the other characters, because the other characters are so either they're dark or they're going through something or whatever. And she's sort of the foil. It seems like that's pretty obvious. I do like the wife. I like the husband and wife hate each other dynamic, and it did seem like she was unhappy because he was never around and always working and all that stuff. But then she also didn't seem like she was wanting to work things out. So there was that, that side of her that she was bad, But I thought the actress did a wonderful job. I thought the mute woman did a wonderful job too, even though I felt like she was more stylized and she was maybe directed to be more expressive because she didn't have dialogue.
Right.
But it worked for me because it did make it seem a little creepier. Although she's definitely a vehicle as well. But for me, like, the movie kind of has a lot of those kind of tropes in it. Sure. And I don't know, the movie is so interesting to me because there are definitely things that are totally hokey, and there are things that are really cool, that work really well, and there's things that are just weird and different than you would expect, and it all kind of works together though, and it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's definitely entertaining. I mean, it is, even by today's standards, this is actually a lower budget monster film. Let's put it that way. I mean, this is stuff that what many people equate as B horror, unfortunately. But yeah, there's some really entertaining moments in here, and overall it's just interesting. I always enjoyed this film because of that, because you almost think they didn't necessarily need to do the gimmick of the Tingler in this film. It almost would have been great if you never actually got a monster. If it was just implied. I mean, after all, Vincent was, his doctor character's tripping on LSD at one point. So, which blew me away. I guess it's like the first time ever on film they try to capture an LSD trip. The feeling of it. And because it caught me off at first when they said, well, they got him his medicine and it was acid. And I'm like, are they actually talking about the acid? And sure enough, oh yeah, they're talking about real acid. I'm like,
yeah, that was a great scene, and I totally forgotten about that until I sat down to watch it again for the show. I'm like, oh my god, how could I have forgotten? This is the movie. And I just posted something on Facebook a few minutes ago as we were starting the show. I said, it's like, the thing about the Tingler, it has this famous gimmicks, and it would have had me at see Vincent Price trip his balls off. I would have bought tickets for a solid week.
Well, it's not exactly a drug you equate with the 50s. So, I mean, it's late 50s.
No, that's the thing, is it's mid-50s, and it was still kind of something that was just kind of talked about in hushes and whispers. And, I hear the military did experiments with this stuff. It wasn't really till, like, then, of course, it would come out with, like, some of the films with, like, Herschel Gordon Lewis, like Something Weird. Sure. And the psychedelic, of course, and Timothy Leary and all that stuff. Then it would really come out. But no, it wasn't a big thing back then, as big of a thing, at least if I'm, aware of my history, which I might not be. But the fact that they went there, I mean, it's not a very explicit scene. It just shows him freaking out. And at one point, they do that little, thing that they do when there's like a dream sequence in a movie over a skeleton. And I'm like, actually, that's not a bad visual representation either. I mean, I don't know how many people actually have, any history with, maybe some hell-raising youth days of their lives, but every time one of these scenes pops up, I kind of like lean forward and say, okay, show me what you got. It was, as far as like, it really just kind of is meant for him to kind of, it doesn't show, it requires him to tell us feeling. It doesn't show us.
Well, no, because you only got so much budget. So
you only have so much budget. They didn't really know how to visualize it and everything like that. And so you're like, so you really are. It's like you're in the room with somebody who's just like freaking out on acid. And I think anybody will tell you that if it's your first time, you don't want to do it alone, pal. Come on.
Yeah. And after he trips on the acid, and after we get the scare of the deaf mute lady, and he discovers the Tingler, this film suddenly turns into a completely different film, and that's where the gimmick works in, where we get a number of gimmick moments. Andrew, what'd you think about this like third act where this is where we start with the gimmick of seeing the Tingler, and it's probably when they were buzzing the chairs and such. How'd you feel about this?
Oh, I just got to mention, I don't know if anyone's ever seen my movie, Cary Grant Takes LSD and Sees a Ghost with No Pants.
It's one of my favorite.
What do you say?
One of my favorite movies.
Yeah, that's based on real, not to keep talking about LSD, but that's based on, I don't know if you guys know this, Cary Grant took LSD about 100 times.
Yeah.
Starting in the late 50s. It was over-the-counter, not over-the-counter, it was prescribed by psychiatry and stuff.
Sure. So, wasn't he involved in a study at one point?
I'm not sure. I know the writer of the Tingler, Rob White, he went to like a lecture or read some Aldous Huxley or something like that, and started experimenting with it while he was in college.
Cary Grant was actually, from what I read anyway, seemed quite supportive of the idea of LSD for therapeutic purposes.
He was definitely a big proponent. That's why I made that movie. I just was like, what was he like when he was tripping? What was Cary Grant like?
That's awesome.
Just anyway. So can I tell you, my grandfather worked for American Theater Supply, and he retired from there. He started doing out of the Signal Corps after World War II, and he was a projectionist and technician by trade. He would install movie projectors and maintain them. So when the Tingler came to the Southeast, he was part of the team wiring the seats. He was in charge of doing that. So Columbia Pictures out in like the West Coast and theaters around there, they sent people like special effects people from Paramount, who like that, all that. But once you got to like East Coast, in particular areas like this, as the movie rolled out later and later, they had an instructions sheet that would come with the box. And so I don't know if you guys think it's boring or not, but I could totally tell you, I saw the sheet. Like he still had it, and I wish to fuck that I had it. But when I was a kid, me and my dad, we watched the Tingler. He's like, I got something really cool to tell you. And my grandfather, they just lived up the street. He was like, he sat me down, told me how he did this stuff. It was rad as hell. And inside the book, I'm not shitting you, there was the moment cues where either the person in the projection booth or like somebody like behind, like, you know what I'm saying, like behind the stage or behind the screen was supposed to fire at exact moments. Like the thing told you exactly when to do it.
I kind of wondered about that. Wow.
Yeah, they did. And Glenn, you've seen it with the things, so you knew when they would do it. But what he said was when they were testing it out, like earlier in the day, they were fucking with people on some like Audrey Hepburn drama. He's like, yeah, we would just press it just to mess with them in the middle early in the day because we wanted to make sure it worked. So some movie about a nun or something. Just
oh my gosh.
Isn't that great?
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's pretty obvious. Like when they do it in the movie, it's supposed to be, like when the lights go out, right?
Yeah.
They just start hitting it, and it was like, I don't know. We said it was like maybe 100 seats or something like that. So not every single seat would have it, and if you didn't get buzzed, a lot of time people would go back, buy another ticket so they could do it. They were really awesome. They were really like into it like that. But it was maybe like a 12 volt. Some of them were more. Some of them were like a 20 something. I can't remember. But yeah, it was literally just a little box, and they all were wired to a control. And they would just start hitting them seats during when they're like the lights are out, in the theater, and then you're like talking about Scream or whatever. They did that, and there was one other, and I can't remember. But I want to say it's when the wife's body was set up. They would do it there too.
But
I'm not sure. That's what the thing that's fucked is. There's no audio commentary on Tingler.
Really? Anywhere?
No. And it would like you really like David Skull or somebody needs to get on it, or Tim Lucas or somebody like that, because like that's you. I mean, I'm going off of memory from when I'm like 10, telling you this shit. I just remember when my grandpa died, I got like some of his personal effects, and I remember thinking like, my hope the fuck, and like his union cards are in there. A lot of stuff about movie projection and things that he'd saved are in there, but the Tingler thing wasn't there. I'm like,
Oh.
It was, but again, this was around the time the rise of TV was around this time, and they were trying to get people into theaters, I think, as well for gimmicks, weren't they? At this time?
Sure. That's what a lot of these things were, to give them something they can't get at home.
Mm-hmm.
To use the old, strip club, motto. And so that's why, and if you were a major motion picture, you made a studio with an unlimited budget, you made Around the World in 80 Days, which is boring as shit. But you know what? Where else are you going to see flamenco dancers and everything?
Yeah.
If you are exploitation, well then this is your arena. And if you are a great showman, you will give them something they can't get. Didn't they also have a thing where they also it was kind of similar to the stories you hear, where they would actually like hire people to be in the audience to run up and down the aisles and say, "Oh my God, it's on me," and stuff like that.
Yeah, they used to have ringers. Yeah, I read somewhere that they used to do ringers where people used to be hired to do that.
Oh yeah, there was plants in the audience. The ladies would faint and shit.
Yeah,
definitely. And they had nurses outside, and all kind of stuff.
Yeah, someone get the gurney. They put the lights. They stopped the films so they could get the gurney, so someone could get lead. Yeah,
it was just a progression of that stuff, because like Macabre had the fright break, and then there was other ones too. That didn't House on Haunted Hill have the Illusiono with the
skeleton coming out? Yeah.
Dad said that that was what was rad. Is Dad would tell me all stories about that kind of stuff, and I was like. He's like, it's because the movies weren't scary. So they had to do shit.
That's the thing. Well, that's the thing is that you would expect that. You would expect that, and I'm sure there's some movies where you could say that about. But the thing that always strikes me about William Castle's movies is none of us get to see that unless you're lucky enough, like Glenn was, where he got to see that thing recreated. A lot of us are stuck at home watching this stuff, and we don't get to experience this. But the films, they still hold up on their own. Now, you would expect them to be just like if a film is terrible, but then all of a sudden this guy's telling you the stories like, they'll forget if the film was terrible as they tell their friend, dude, this film that I saw, they had to take this woman out on a gurney halfway through the movie because I think she died, and that's going to like, holy shit, I have to see this then. Totally equating the fact that maybe the 45 minutes leading up to that was boring, as boring as Around the World in 80 Days. But, but his films, you watch them, they're cheap and, they're gimmicky and they still hold up. Every single one I've seen, and I've seen a few, like I said, there's still a few that I haven't seen, but I've seen probably about 7 or 8 of them, and they all still hold up today without any gimmicks. But I'm sure they would play even better with the gimmicks.
I don't think that Tingler was. Tony, what do you think about that puppet, man? I mean, sometimes it looked like it was working okay, right? Like it looked like the legs might have accidentally got moved by the carpet and shit.
Well, the first time I saw it, I didn't notice. What I noticed this time was how you can see the strings and things like that. I didn't notice that the first time I saw it. I mean, the shape of it's a little sausagey, but and then the way it kind of like the heartbeat thing. But I thought it was cool with the audio. Yeah, how they had the heartbeat thing, and I actually liked that how they brought that back whenever the Tingler, it was kind of like the theme music for the Tingler is that heartbeat, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was cool, and Vincent knows how to work a puppet, so it makes it look like he's attacking him. That attack on his arm, it's just like He's selling that, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, the movie works because the people making it, even though they know it's ridiculous, they sell the shit out of it. You know.
Well, like that scene where he's sleeping and the thing crawls up on his chest and it's choking him, and he's making just enough noise to where you could tell it's crushing his throat. I'm like, that's actually a bit of a creepy scene. You're just like,
yeah, but how did he get out of the box though? Who did that? Huh?
Well, yeah, that was his wife, of course.
Motherfucker. You know she killed herself in real life, Patricia.
Oh, did she really?
I did see that where she died young, but I did not see how.
Oh,
I mean, I might be wrong. I don't know.
I'll look it up right now.
One of them
she
killed herself.
I know that she died. I know that she died in her 40s, so it's probably her.
God,
I'll check it out.
Said that I should have put it in the chat. That's a real downer there. Sorry.
Popped
into my head.
Now we're going to go to our panel's questions.
Oh, I got a good one. P.S.
Well, first we'll lead with Glenn. Glenn, do you have a topic or something that you wanted to talk to the group about? We haven't touched yet.
Not really.
Okay.
We covered pretty much everything that I care to discuss about this.
All right, fair enough. Andrew, we'll go to you. What's the question or topic that you wanted to bring to the group tonight?
Okay, if you had to pick one orifice, no, I'm just playing. That's not what I want. All right, you're gonna have to do a little thinking about this. This. So they don't do gimmicks in movies no more. They don't really. I mean, it's not a thing anymore. But you got to pick. Everybody's got to pick one Best Picture winner they can think of and come up with a gimmick for it.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, gee.
Wow,
Yep.
That's tough.
Oh, I've got one.
Okay,
So-
go Tanya. Go Tanya.
You're
So the
such a badass.
So you're watching the Shawshank Redemption, and you're stuck. You're
Sorry.
stuck in the theater.
I'm sorry. Did you just go?
You have to figure out how to break out. So you have to actually slowly chisel your way through the walls of the theater in order to leave at the end.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Shawshank. I love how quick you came up with that too.
I know, right?
I think that she actually had that stored in her brain beforehand.
I
That's
texted her earlier so she would be ready.
It's like for years, ever since she saw the movie, it would make this perfect. And then finally, years later, it comes full circle.
They let me in for free, but I had to pay to get out.
It would be great if they bricked the entrances to Shawshank once everybody was in, and then they'd have to dig their way out. Yeah. Oh, Tanya, that reveals so much about you now. Now we know. There you go, folks. Go see Shawshank Redemption with Tanya, or have her over to your house to watch Shawshank. You'll never get out. She'll be like, "Oh, don't mind me. I just brought some bricks and mortar with me." No, go ahead. Enjoy the movie. Really.
This is becoming a lot more Edgar Allan Poe than Stephen King.
Nice. Scotty D, do you got one?
Only thing I can think of is if they did if William Castle had produced The Shape of Water, I'm sure that he would have had something where he would have, being the 50s and there wasn't any kind of, sexual assault claims that could be filed and taken seriously. I'm sure he would have put some ringers in the audience and would have had the threat of a actual fish van coming out and carrying off the women of the audience halfway through the film. I can totally see that happening. If it were marketed in the 50s, anytime after that, probably no. But if it were actually marketed in the same era that the film took place, sure.
Nice.
I don't know. I mean, I think it would have been cool if No Country for Old Men, they just would randomly take a bolt gun to someone in the crowd each time they showed it.
Just a guy walks down the aisle with the hydraulic cow killer. Just you. Boom. Oh.
Just walk. Actually, you wouldn't have to kill him. Just walk up to someone and go. Just have a guy dressed like that with the thing, just saying, "Call it." And obviously, it has to be after the movie, but it would just be great if someone be just sitting there watching the credits and dude just walks up with a bolt gun and be like, "Call it." They'd be like, "What?" It'd be just like that shop here. What are we flipping for? Just call it.
Nice. Andrew, what was your idea?
Oh, I thought that was a pretty classy, by the way, for Shape of Water. I would have just been said like, get free popcorn. Fuck this fish. I think mine would.
You thought the Faith No More video caused some PETA complaints.
I think for Crash there would be a Cure Your Racism booth where they push you down the stairs.
Oh Jesus! Wow.
Nice.
Wow. Let's see. For me, you know what? I think what you do is you during Silence of the Lambs, you randomly hand people bottles of lotion, and then at some point you have a guy in just a robe walk down the aisle with a basket and a flashlight, and he flashes it on people and gives them the basket and goes, it puts the lotion in the basket or it gets the hose. I'm sorry.
But I would keep it because I want some hose.
And then he pulls out a water gun and sprays you in the face if you don't give it to him. So,
yeah.
Like, okay, I'm dark like that. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just wondering what they would do for the multiple mix scene. I mean, what do they throw at the screen, and what does the screen throw back?
Oh, wow.
Hey, say I could smell your hot butter. I myself cannot.
You get some of that ooze you used to have in the 80s for kids toys, and then you throw that. Never mind.
Yeah, just take out the jalapenos and use the cheese, or leave it in, depending. I mean, no judgment. That was my question.
There you go.
Wonderfully.
That was great. Scotty D, how about you? You got a question or topic we haven't touched on yet?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I wish I did, but I really didn't.
Okay.
I did not really. Let me check my notes, see if I can BS something from this. Nope.
It's not a deep film. Let's face it. We talked here a lot about the film tonight, and for me, I was happy that it got enough votes, and it came from the 50s. So
I do want to point out one thing that I thought was strange, because I think there are certain things, and looking at these movies later, you don't know if it's a flaw in the actual cheap plotting of the movie. Because let's face it, they did not put as much thought into exploitation films as much as in the story department always as they did the A pictures. Not always. Sometimes they did, sometimes they did not. But then also there's the idea that we are also now 60 years removed from when this movie was made, and we don't know how differently they conducted themselves. I mentioned in the beginning how he seems to handle all the autopsies. It's totally fine. Mark mentioned how it seemed to be totally fine for him to just go ahead and have somebody in the room. Oh, your relative? Fine. Another thing is that, okay, let's talk about respect that some people get. No one really gives a shit that the wife died.
Her body gets passed around.
And her body, that's the thing, is that, like, okay, what kind of practice is this where, no, I put the body in the car and I drove her over here. She's dead. Okay, I guess I'll just take her home. And
that was before OSHA.
And in the morning, I'm going to take her to the operating room. I'm like, what? Wait, how? And just cart her from scene to scene? I mean, what? Did this happen? Or is this just bad writing? I mean, I know
about that too. Yeah.
I mean, I know that he doesn't actually do it, but I mean, like that's probably be my scene. Like, let's play a game. 50s or bad writing? Because they are, not only are they like really willy-nilly about the wife dying, he says, well, I could have been a better husband. Nothing I can do about it now. And my favorite is Vincent Price's wife. I'm sorry, your wife? She's dead. Oh. Anyway, I'm going to bed.
She's like, yeah, sorry about your wife again, or something like that.
Like, how could you even sleep in the same house? What the hell? I would be freaked out. But like if somebody just brought a corpse over, and and then of course she's getting carted back and forth, or at least she's supposed to be. In fact, the fact that she's not being carted back and forth to more locations is a cause of great concern in the film. So I guess that would be my only question. I don't know if there is even an answer for it, if it can even be opened up, but that would be my thing. 50s or bad writing?
50s or bad writing. I know, Glenn, is it 50s or bad writing that they just nonchalantly handle this dead body like it's a piece of luggage?
I think the answer to that is yes and yes.
I think we'd all agree with that. Yeah, a little bit of both, possibly. I mean, it was a different time, the 50s. So. Although I will admit, this is the first monster film I think we've watched out of our series that didn't have any nuclear radiation involved, so there's a plus there. The damn nukes. So, Tanya, how about you? Did you have any topic or something that you maybe wanted to bring to discussion?
Well, I did. We kind of touched on it a little bit. I was going to ask you guys because I feel like while watching it, I feel like I definitely miss some of the gimmick. Like, I want to have that, especially when we go to the last third and they're in the theater, and it just seems so cool, that I could be there with the seats buzzing, people screaming, all these people interacting, and then the lights go down, but I'm sitting here in front of my TV in the living room, with my lights on and experiencing that, and just, wondered what you guys think that we would like. Do you think the film lacks because we're missing that experience? And maybe, I don't know, Glenn, if you've seen it also not at the theater, if you can like talk to that, like how the experience was different, how much it's lacking.
It lacks a lot from seeing in the theater. I mean, and it's partly because everyone who was at the theater knew, kind of what was going on, but just it's that group mentality of seeing this, because then it's you're just watching, all of a sudden someone just kind of somewhere in the theater just kind of goes, whoa. it just, because it's coming not from where you're expecting to hear noises from. It kind of keeps you a little bit more on edge the whole time, because you never know who in the audience is also just going to make some kind of weird noise and stuff like that. So it definitely was. It's so much better in the theater with that experience.
Yeah, because I feel like it would have been a sort of interactive experience where you feel like you're kind of in the story for a moment, and I feel like you just can't get that, in your living room.
No. I mean, I suppose you could, well, you're married. I'm saying you could watch it with your husband, and each of you could have a little, like, joy buzzer thing, and just every now and then just swat the other person.
Do it on our own.
Well, wow,
every now and then you're watching a movie, your husband just all of a sudden just...
little Tingler device. They have certain remote control device. Anyway, it's a different tingle, I think.
That's a different movie.
That's a different movie. You can still use the remote control, kind of like the Tingler, as the gimmick. It's just a different type of movie. Suddenly, Deep Throat is in Spectro. No. Whoa!
And they covered that in Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yeah.
Well, where this is shown in Feel Around.
At random times during the theater viewing, someone may be grabbing you. Do not be afraid.
Sarah, what is her name? Sharon Mitchell actually did that to a guy in a porno theater once that was showing one of her movies, and I think the guy died. True story.
Wow. Scott, I love your warehouse of knowledge.
How did he die? Happy, apparently.
Oh, wow. And on that note, we will put an end to the French tickler for tonight. I mean, Tingler. Now, really quick, as we've done with our other It Came from the 50s, I want to get from our panel, it can be anything now, but one thing that the Tingler taught you from the 50s. And we will start with Tanya. What would you say one thing the Tingler taught you about the 50s, or just taught you in general?
It's dangerous to drink.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, don't just pick up your random mortician and take him home for a beer. You never know what might happen. Nice. Scotty D, how about you?
If you decide to take the corpse of your wife with you wherever you go, you can totally get into the carpool lane.
Wow. Andrew, how about you?
Oh man. Well, I learned that if you cut your hand on a saucer, the blood immediately looks like it was there for like the last 15-20 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Glenn, how about you?
I learned that just because your wife doesn't have a voice and can't nag you, that doesn't mean you still don't want to kill her.
Nice.
Apparently.
And I learned that even though it's 1959, it's an old movie, as the young kids would say, they still knew how to drop some sick burns. The scenes you have to watch alone with Vincent Price and his wife are just so much fun for that banter. One of my favorite, I wrote a note on it because it just stood out, was, and it rolls so naturally, is I think she's pouring a drink or whatnot, and she goes, "There's a word for you," and he just immediately retorts, "There are several words for you." And it's just the way they say it. I just like, oh damn,
dude! If you like that banter, man, there's one he did called Comedy of Terrors.
Yeah, I know Comedy of Terrors. Yeah.
Oh, that one's fucking really funny.
Oh yeah,
really funny. There's just constant back and forth with those characters.
And it makes you wonder, like, you know, a few of those banter scenes, how much of that was written and how much of it was them riffing off each other, because some of that just seems so natural, but that's just how talented they were, especially Vincent Price, who we love, and I'll watch Vincent in everything and anything. So, and now I got to look up the recipes read by Vincent Price, because that sounds just awesome.
There's a great, they had this wonderful thing where they basically, it was this, they had a couple recipes on it that were very serious, and then they had 2 joke tracks on it. Uh-huh. One was remixing basically his instructions and having him basically, they manipulated it to have Vincent Price singing a song about pork, which of course, taking the other meanings of the word makes that song really funny. It's like pork, 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 pork. It's Vincent Price. And then there's another one, I think, where, keep in mind, these were often, regardless of them being cooking things, Vincent Price was often a figure that appealed to children, young kids that were going to the theater. So another one, they had like a recipe that was, they recut it and it says how to cook young boys or something like that. Geez. Because young boys were actually the audience for horror films back then, or right. At least they were perceived to be. So yeah, there's like 4 tracks, 2 that are serious and 2 that aren't. But Vincent Price was a damn serious cook. And they basically used that to kind of they kind of like blended both of the appeals that he had, both as a classy cook and a iconic actor, basically.
Yeah. Well, just I hope you guys don't mind. I just want to share the quip, a little anecdote with Vincent Price that I learned. My wife got me the Thriller 25th Anniversary Edition CD. And what's really cool about it is you get these interviews with Quincy Jones and that. Well, they talk about getting Vincent Price for Thriller. And apparently the speech, the guy who was supposed to write it didn't write it till that morning while Vincent was on his way to the studio. And apparently was literally off of the press and into the next room and handed to Vincent. But they've got a recording of the original take of Vincent Price recording his dialogue for Thriller, and he only had to do 2 takes, and he's never done anything like this before. But I'm sitting there thinking, this is Vincent Price. He came in, they said he did 2 takes, the second take was great, they left. That was it. But what's great about this recording and why I bring it up is, at one point they got him singing through the whole dialogue plus the one verse they didn't actually use in the song. But it's Vincent, so I'm just listening. And at the very end, all of a sudden he goes, "Can you dig it?" And I'm just like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." I'm like, did he just do that? So I listened to the track again. I'm like, "Oh my God, that's awesome."
You gotta turn it up really loud, but the very tail, he's like, "Bitch, better have my money."
I would just want that as on my phone. I don't even know what for. Just like every time someone sends me a message, "Can you dig?" I would love that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's awesome. It was like the best thing I like the music anyway for Michael J, but this just added, I'm like, oh my God, a recording of Vincent and him saying that. This is just awesome. But yeah, apparently it was only 2 takes and he was gone, and the take you got was the second take. But he had never talked over, he hadn't really rehearsed much. He's never really talked over a song like that before, but they told him, well, here's how much time you have to say this amount of dialogue. And he's like, okay.
Well, he can't, there's really not, if he hadn't done anything like that before, there's not really much other stuff that he hadn't done. He did movies, he did TV back when it was live, so he had to deal with that. He's done theater, he did radio. I'm sure it was very similar to radio in some regards.
Sure.
So there's really, that cat, man, I have such respect for the icon, especially the genre icons that passed years ago, Boris Karloff and Vincent Price and everybody like that. I have such high regard for them. And if you look in their background, maybe they were best known for one thing, but if you really look at them, they were kind of great at everything. And it's really amazing. And you can, if you look closely enough, you can see how we were able to bring that talent for everything into that one thing they became known for. So Vincent Price is definitely a class act in that regard.
Yes, he is. And that's why we love him. We could talk on forever, but I think we will wrap it up for tonight about Vincent Price and the Tingler. Hope you enjoyed our discussion and hope you seek this film out. Now, here is the point of the show where these fine folks can chill the hell out of themselves, and you can find out where they are when they're not here. And we'll start with Glenn. Go, Glenn.
You can find me on the internet with the Movie Bunker, Guy in a Bunker Productions, both on YouTube and on Facebook. I am more active right now with my gaming podcast, which is the Adventure Party, which I do with the amazing Brad Ludwig. You can find us on gncast.com with the Adventure Party, or just follow me on Twitter at Guy in a Bunker.
Awesome. Fantastic. And Mr. Gonzorific, please drop some info.
Oh, yeah. Well, my friends and I here in Athens, Georgia, make movies under the banner of Gonzorific. You can watch our stuff on Amazon Prime, Amazon.com/V as in vagina /Gonzorific, GONZORIFFIC. And on Vincent Price's birthday, just this past Memorial Day weekend, we filmed a little movie called Vincent Price's Skull. Nice. It's got a bikini car wash in it. It's got Vincent Price's cookbook actually figures into the plot, one of his actual recipes. And then we had a local theater actor. Dee made him up to look like Vincent Price, and I enjoyed writing dialogue for our Vincent Price. It's pretty good. Oh, and there's a bikini roller skating on a half pipe also. It's got some cool stuff in it.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Look forward to that soon, folks. And Scotty D, you still got some stuff out there?
Eventually, yeah. I think so, somewhere, maybe. I haven't done anything in a while. I really want to do it again. I've had a lot of stuff with the move, and then I had some health things, but I'm hoping to eventually get back. In the meantime, whether I do or I don't, please check out my old writings at movieocrity.com. Actually, you can also check out some writings at filmgeekcentral.wordpress.com. I never pimped that, and I should, so there it is. And also, you can check out my web series, Movieocrity, at vimeo.com/channel/Movieocrity. Fantastic.
And Tanya, I know you got something you want to share with our audience. Please, yes! please share with our audience where they could find your stuff right now.
My movie just came out. Monos Returns is the follow-up film to Monos: The Hands of Fate, and 50 years later. And It's screening around. You can find out information just by looking up Monos Returns. And you can find our website. We're online all over the place. And if you want information on me, just look up Tanya Atomic, Tonjia. And my website's down right now. It's being redone, but I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we thank you that you could take time on your busy schedule to join us tonight in the spoiler room. It's great to have you back, Tanya. Great to have all my panel here tonight. It is a fun discussion. This was a lot of fun. I hope you folks enjoyed our discussion here on this old classic B film, which may be a lot better than you might expect. So now, everybody, the Tingler. Oh no, he's coming through your device. He's going to attack you. We all must now scream. So scream, folks, scream. Otherwise, the Tingler will get you.
I killed it.
Oh, wrong Tingler.
Dude.
Hey, all my friends out there looking for more spoiler room goodness? Then why don't you check out our brand new Patreon page, patreon.com/specialmarkproductions, where you can get access to exclusive spoiler room episodes and a whole lot more. You can also find us on Facebook groups at SMPRD and on to Twitter at SpecialMarkPro. Let your voice be heard and let us know what you would like to see in the spoiler room, as well as just how we're doing in general. We appreciate your support, and remember, in the spoiler room, the conversation is fresh, but we do spoil the movies.